Hello again. I'm Jay Haley from Palmore Institute, and in this video, we'll be covering the senior level speaking class, week 2, and this video is part 2. In part 1, I introduced some vocabulary that you'll be seeing in the unit. In this video, what I'd like to do is cover part of the speaking task that we would be doing in class on page 15. It comes up around the middle of the page. And in the video, I actually, if you watched the last video, I mentioned I have a special guest. And so what I've done is I've made a video with the guest, and I'd like you just to listen to the video. It's a short conversation. The topic is about life in the big city versus life in the country. And I know we're not going to be doing too much in the way of listening videos because of copyright restrictions, but this is a good chance, if you're in a listening class, to do a little extra listening. So, have a listen to the conversation, and when it's done, I'll come back and I'll be giving some comments on some of the language that we use in the conversation. So, without further ado, take a moment and enjoy the video. So, I'd like to introduce my coworker, Lowell Isles.
Hello there.
If you're already a Palmore student, then you've met Lowell. But he's agreed to join us to help out with this speaking and give us a chance to interact a little more naturally than with one speaker. So, first, Lowell, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Just relaxing at home. How about you?
Yeah, you know what? About the same. Well, listen. So in this lesson, Shin is giving his opinion, and he says, "I love living in a big city, and there's always lots to do and exciting places to go."
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think about what Shin said?
Oh, I agree. I think I'm a big city boy in a sense. I mean, I've lived in small towns. I've lived in a small town in California. It was a village, and it was a little bit boring, actually very boring. And I've lived in a small town in New Mexico, and Cloudcroft, New Mexico. That was a population of about 1,000 people. It was, beautiful, but not very interesting in terms of what you could do. And I also lived in a small town in Oregon, Dallas, Oregon, and that was really, really, really boring. So my experiences of living in the city are mostly living in like Eugene, Oregon, or Los Angeles, or a few other cities that are not quite as big, but basically there's more things to do in the city. So I prefer living in the city. How about you?
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to ask, how old were you when you lived in Los Angeles?
To be honest, I was born in Los Angeles, but I basically lived in Altadena, which is in Los Angeles County, and I think I lived in let's see, near Santa Monica, Venice Beach for like a year. I was around 4, so I moved from Altadena, I think, to Venice Beach, and I don't remember a whole lot, but I do remember Venice Beach being quite fun, and it's part of the big Los Angeles area, so there are lots of things to do, and it's great.
Yeah. So even though you were like a little kid, you were able to appreciate the things that a big city has to offer.
Yeah, I mean, there are museums, like history museums, science museums, of course, Disneyland.
That must be nice. We had
not very far.
I went to Disneyland once when I was a kid. It was so far away.
Yeah, it was only where I live in California. It was only about a 40-minute drive to get there, so we'd go there once or twice a year. And yeah, it's one of the advantages of living in the big city.
No, I bet.
Or in a big city in California, in Southern California.
No, you asking about me too, and I agree totally. Like, I definitely prefer living in the big city. like you
What?
said, it has a lot to offer. Uh, I like the choice of restaurants and places to go. I know you
Oh,
like
me too. Me too.
lots of different kinds of food, and
Oh
I'm sure
yes.
you appreciate having different choices of places to go for tacos and things.
Oh yes.
And I'm the same. Like I like to try different restaurants and go out. I like the shops. I like to be able to walk most places. I think that's a great thing about living in a really big city that's not car oriented,
Yeah.
like
San
Osaka is.
Francisco. Yeah.
Yeah, so I definitely appreciate it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I grew up in the suburbs,
Okay.
and on the outskirts of Buffalo, which is a medium to smallish size city.
Hmm.
But it was a good place to grow up. I like that, but at least at this point in life, no, I don't think I would like to go back to that. I love the
Why?
city.
Okay.
It's a bit too boring.
Okay.
It's not much going on. Great,
In the
great when you're a
suburbs.
kid. Like I used to, I'd play in the woods. There was a big forest behind the house and stuff. So I had kind of a Tom Sawyer life. If I went out my back door, it was all Tom Sawyer. If I
Hmm.
went out my front door, it was like a John Hughes movie. So kind of a nice balance of country and suburb. But nah, I want to be in the city right now.
Yeah. I think living in the city or close to the heart of the city, it's probably better than the suburbs. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. Anyway, Lowell, thanks a lot. Thanks
Oh,
for
thank you.
helping out with this question, and really appreciate it. Thanks for
Yeah.
joining us today.
My pleasure.
All right, we'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Okay. Now let me give you some feedback on this conversation between Lowell and that guy who looks like me but dresses a little more casually. Now, I have 7 points. Let's take a look at them. First one up, in a sense. I think Lowell mentions I'm a big city boy, in a sense.
I think I'm a big city boy in a sense. I mean, I've lived in small.
You might remember from last week's video, this is video 1.2, where I was giving feedback on what I had said myself. I said I pretty much agree with what Iris says. Well, pretty much and in a sense have basically the same meaning. They really both mean almost but not completely. So if you say you're a city boy in a sense, it means in some ways I'm a city boy, but maybe not 100%. It's just like last week with pretty much. Lowell could have said, I'm pretty much a city boy, and you would have the same meaning. This is one of the cool things about English is as your level goes up and up, you're going to discover some different ways to say the same thing. And it's a good thing. You should try to gather the skills to create different ways to say the same things because very often there is a little difference in the nuance. Now, in this case, pretty much is a little more casual, in a sense, is a little more formal sounding, but they mean the same thing. Let's move on to the second point. The second point, in terms of. Okay. He describes his hometown as not being very interesting in terms of what you could do.
It was, yeah, beautiful, but not very interesting in terms of what you could do. And
Okay. Now, when you're talking about in terms of, what it means is that you're thinking about one particular aspect of something. That is, when he says in terms of what you can do, he's talking about only about what you can do in the town, not other aspects. Like, for example, he's not talking about the quality of education or affordable housing or cheap housing. He's not talking about the job opportunities that exist in the place, but focusing only on what you can do, it's not a very interesting place, apparently. And there's some different ways to say it. Uh, in terms of regarding, with respect to, you can just plug those phrases in where it says in terms of, and you would have the same meaning regarding what you can do with respect to what you can do. Now, let me give you a quick example of this. Right now, we're at home. Schools are closed. It's not only Palmore, but my kids' schools are at home. So it means we're doing a lot of homeschooling here. And a lot of the job is falling to me since I'm home during the days. Well, we've been focusing a little bit on geography as my kids are going to be doing that in school. We've been learning about countries. Now, I hope they remember that in terms of area, Russia is the largest country, whereas in terms of population, China is the largest country in the world. I'll be giving them a test later. We'll see how they do. Hopefully, they're paying attention. Okay. Next word I'd like to focus on. A really easy looking word, really, but 3 times. Really, really, really boring. It's really, really, really boring.
I also lived in a small town in Oregon, Dallas, Oregon, and that was really, really, really boring. So
why are we focusing on such an easy word? Well, the example, I think, or the key point here is use your adverbs. Adverbs have this amazing power where they can take what you're saying from a simple fact and make it into something that sounds more human, less like a robot. A robot might say, it is boring. Purely a fact. Yeah, it's true. It's a good sentence. But if you want to make it a more interesting, more human, more feeling sentence, you would say, it's really boring. And if you really want to emphasize, you can just repeat the word really. Really, really, really boring. This is really great English. It's not that hard to do, to use really and just repeat it. Don't do it too much, but a little bit is going to make your English sound a lot more human, and that's what you want. A couple examples. First one is the sentence that you'll see on the left at the bottom of the card. It's delicious. Purely a fact. Yeah, maybe I want to eat it, but, you're not selling me very hard, and there's not a lot of feeling, really. Now, if you say, it's absolutely delicious, now I want to eat. Similarly, it's interesting. This may be true, but to make it more human, it's really, really interesting. Okay, don't have to repeat 3 times. 2's okay, but using adverbs is very, very useful. You might say really, really, really useful in terms of making your speech more emotional, human. Use your adverbs. Okay, next, I bet. I think I say this myself in reaction to something that Lowell had said. Nice. We had
not very far.
I went to Disneyland once when I was a kid. It was so far away.
Yeah, it was only where I live in California. It was only about a 40-minute drive to get there, so we'd go there once or twice a year. And yeah, it's one of the advantages of living in the big city.
No, I bet. And it's a very common reaction to when you're listening to somebody speaking and you agree with what they say. I bet just means I think so. Now, you can imagine it's like a casino and you're placing a bet in a casino. What you said is true. What you said is not true. Where should I put the poker chips? Yeah, I agree with you. My bet's there. Hopefully, I'm going to win the money. Okay. I bet. Use it as a reaction when you agree with what someone said. It has a lot to offer. I agree totally. Like, I definitely prefer living in the big city. Like you said, it has a lot to offer. If you say something has a lot to offer, you just mean it has a lot of good points. It has a lot of good points that you can take advantage of. A car-oriented city. I like to be able to walk most places. I think that's a great thing about living in a really big city that's not car oriented. Now, if a city is car oriented, it just means that you need a car for your daily life. The transportation, public transportation, or walking is not such a good way to get around. So the city is car oriented. You might have a walking oriented city, a car oriented city. I suppose you could have a bicycle oriented city. Think about the place you live, the city or town you live in. What is it oriented to? Cars, walking, etc. And lastly, the outskirts. I grew up. In the suburbs,
Okay.
and on the outskirts of Buffalo. When I talk about living or growing up on the outskirts of a city, I mean I grew up on the edge, right where the city and suburbs begin to blend into the countryside. It's just at the edge of the city. Those are the outskirts of a place. And that's it for this week. Thank you very much for joining us. Thanks again to Lowell Isles for helping out with our sample conversation. Go back, watch the conversation again. It's good listening practice. And next week, we'll be moving on to the next unit. I hope to see you in the next video. Take care, everyone.